electoral votes it has. This map, in some ways, helps visualize the impact each state has on the presidential election and allows us to show you the Electoral College right on the map. Joining us now is Gary Cohn. He served as the director of the National Economic Council and it was chief economic advisor to President Trump from 2017 to 2018. Gary, welcome.
Thank you, Nora. Thanks for having me.
So you've seen the same results. You're along this journey with us. What do you think about how the night is shaping out?
Well, I think the night is shaping up as you've described it. I think the Trump campaign is done fairly well. I think they've performed better in certain areas, as you pointed out. But the night's not over.
Yeah.
I don't think anyone should be celebrating yet in Trump headquarters, but I think they got to be very, very pleased with where they are now and where they stand.
Mm-hmm. There has been an impression on the campaign trail and certainly among voters that Donald Trump would fix the economy. I mean, that's what he's been saying. I'll fix it. That's his slogan. He has also said that he would impose a 25% tariff on goods now from Mexico. He's added Mexico to the list. The estimate of his tax proposals in addition to the tariffs, the estimate is it would add some $7 trillion to the deficit over the next decade. That is double what Kamala Harris would do. Is that good for the economy?
So we've been on this deficit problem now for the last 6 or 8 years, and it really got exasperated with COVID. You know, if you look at
what spending that was enacted under Donald Trump.
It started, I said, 7 or 8 years we've been under this problem. It's not a new problem. But if you look at what's been going on in this country, tax revenues have stayed about equal. If you look at revenues to GDP, and that's the right way to measure it, how much of the economy are we collecting? What's really changed dramatically in the last 3 or 4 or 5 years is how much of the GDP we're spending. Expenditures as a percentage of GDP have changed quite dramatically, and they've changed quite dramatically in the last 4 years. I think we have to realize that the spending to GDP has to be brought under control, and that's before we get to the issue of the Social Security Trust Fund, which is ultimately going to run out of money in the next 7 years, and we're going to have to curtail benefits for seniors, which I don't believe we will ever get to that point. I think we will fulfill our obligation to pay seniors their benefits.
And I know we don't have time or the graphics tonight, but for everybody who knows the pie chart of the federal government, about 2/3 of it is entitlements.
Yes.
So if you ever really want to take a whack to federal spending, you have to take a whack to entitlements. And for entitlements, it's Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid. So are you suggesting that under Donald Trump, he would do that?
No, I'm not. I'm not suggesting that at all.
But you're saying that someone should?
I'm suggesting there are many other places where we're going to have to take a hard look of how we spend our money and how efficiently.
There aren't any other major places. There's entitlements.
There are many. There are other places. You're right. It's 2/3. There's discretionary spending. There's military spending. How efficiently do we spend our military money? Are we spending our military money on things that we need today? Or are we spending our military money on things that we bought 10 years ago that made sense 10 years ago? And they're creating jobs in certain economies. Now, that's important. The jobs are really important. But I think we have to take a fresh look at everything we buy in the country, why we buy it and why we spend that money.
Was there anything about Donald Trump's presidency where he exercised fiscal constraint?
Yes, there were places where he exercised fiscal constraint. I think he took advice from some of his advisors on places where he would have spent additional money had he not listened to some of his advisors. And if you look at the spending during that period of time, we were 2 to 3% lower in spending to GDP than we are today.
Gary, you were the architect of the Trump tax policy that was put in place in 2017. He's campaigning saying he's not going to tax Social Security income. He's not going to tax overtime. He's not going to tax tips, something Vice President Harris also says. There are a number of things. It floated not having income tax. The Republicans look like they may get control of the Senate. Do you think a Republican-controlled Senate would do any of those things?
Well, you also need the House, potentially. So remember, we've got legislation. Legislation starts in the House, works its way to the Senate, and then gets to the president's office. So we don't know what the House is going to look like at this point. I think that what candidates promise on the campaign trail and what they do in reality are two different outcomes. It's very interesting to go promise. As you said, both candidates went out of their way to promise the electorate certain things that cannot be delivered. We, at the end of the day, we are going to have to tax some things because we do spend money. As you point out, we have enormous entitlement programs in this country. We have interest on the debt. We have to service our debt. We have a military that we have to invest in. In fact, we have to continue to invest more in. We can't do that without raising money. So if you're going to change the way we tax and not tax certain buckets of income, and you're going to bring back SALT deductions, because both candidates want to bring back SALT deductions as well. State and local tax deductions.
To
yes.
The coasts.
The amount of taxable income that we're going to have in this country is going to be very small, and it just won't work. So I think we're going to have to deal with the reality of trying to look at our fiscal position and be somewhat responsible and get our debt to GDP back into a normal place.
But the Trump-Vance campaign promises to solve all of that through tariffs, which are blunt instruments. Gary, I know you don't like them. So, I mean, can you bottom line that for us, though? Because if we are being told that there are going to be tariffs put on goods, they will raise costs for the poorest people in this country. What they buy is going to become more expensive for them.
So, again, I won't categorically say I don't like tariffs. Tariffs have an important role to play when a country is dumping products or selling products in this country that we manufacture substantially below the cost that we manufacture them at, because they're run by state-owned enterprises, so they don't pay for capital, they don't pay living wages because they don't have to, and they don't care about the environment. If you have those three competitive advantages, you can produce a product substantially cheaper than we can in the United States. If you're doing that and selling your product here in the United States, we should impose a tariff on you as a country and the product. If we don't manufacture the product in the United States and we're putting a tariff on it, I agree with you. We're putting a consumption tax on our consumers, and therefore they will be able to consume less products, and therefore we will stop economic growth. We'll slow down economic growth. That's not what we want to do.
Gary,
If he takes a White House